This edition of MacVoices is supported by Lightstream. Low rates, great service, lending uncomplicated. Get a debt consolidation loan from 5.85% APR with AutoPay and a special listener discount at lightstream.com/MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by ATTO, the power behind the storage, providing network and storage connectivity for Mac users for more than 30 years. Visit atto.com to learn more. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's always a good time when I get to talk to the folks from FiLMiC because it usually means that they have something new that I'm going to want to use. I'm a huge fan of FiLMiC Pro. It's the video app that I use on my iPad for CES and NAB and for some personal projects as well. This time, I'm happy, though, to have Neill and Chris of FiLMiC to talk about something a little bit new. Gentlemen, welcome. It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Chris, this is your first time, and so we're in competition. You went with a bow tie. I went with a traditional tie.
Oh, this is how I always dress. I go to bed this way.
Okay. I didn't need to know that, Chris. So, gentlemen, you have an announcement or something new. I know it's been in the press a little bit, but I'll let you. I won't steal your thunder. I'll let you talk about it.
Okay, sure. We recently launched a passion project for us, which would be the FiLMiC Firstlight photo app. For longtime viewers, they might be interested to know this is actually our third run at a photo app. And so we wouldn't be releasing this product if we weren't enormously proud of it. It's been a long development process. We've learned a lot of things along the way. We were fortunate enough to have an expansive group of talented mobile photographers on our beta group, and actually they strongly influenced the direction of the final product, so much so that you could even potentially say that this is the fourth version of a photo app that we tried to bring to market, because the product that we had in March, when we got into extensive external beta testing, has been completely reimagined for the product that's now available in the App Store today. Some of the things, I guess, at a high level that we learned is even the most experienced and professional photographers, when it comes to mobile, they are very content letting the app and the iPhone do a lot of the heavy lifting for them. Consequently, we reimagined our user interface to be much faster, simpler perhaps on the surface, but it's still extremely powerful underneath the hood. So we think we've come up with a beautiful, elegant, intuitive user interface that just unlocks a whole range of functionality. Chris, our CTO here, is also an enormous vintage camera collector and a passionate photographer in his own right. So let me pass it over to him to give you guys a little bit more of a granular view on what Firstlight can do.
Yeah, so like Neill said, we had started with basically our ethos was, let's make the FiLMiC Pro of still photography. It's going to have all the things. It's going to have matrix metering. It's going to have variable user-defined weights. It's going to have EV offset parameters for exposure, just as granular and as pro as you could possibly get. We showed this to our beta testers, and they said to us, you obviously don't understand the point of mobile photography. And they kind of sat us down and they educated us, and they said, listen, mobile photography is about escaping from complexity. That's the whole point of it. And we this, like Neill said, we were on our third iteration at this point. We had spent years on this technology. Some of the first prototypes for a photo app that we had made internally, it was 4-ish years ago. And we were heartbroken. So we went back to the drawing board and we said to ourselves, we need to obfuscate this. We need to make this a more minimalistic, a more streamlined experience. So we didn't actually rip the technology out of Firstlight. That's not true at all. What we did is we obfuscated it. So before, where Firstlight had these very complex metering systems, we actually just fully automated them. So now the user, all they need to do if they want to shoot a long exposure, they need to just select shutter priority and they're done. There's no defining of matrices. There's no selecting weights. It's all determined for them automatically. And the things that you can do with Firstlight in terms of long exposure effects are extraordinary. Other apps that offer long exposure simulation are doing just that. It's just simulation. But what some people don't really understand is that these phones are actually capable of true long exposure effects. You just have to build your own metering system. And that's what we did. We built our own metering system from the ground up. It is not using Apple's APIs. And that's really the heart of Firstlight. Firstlight lets you control the light. You can choose an ISO priority if you want to. You can choose a shutter priority if you want to, or just leave it in auto and let it make all the decisions for you. And I think that's pretty extraordinary. There's other things that we've done too. Our analytics, people are familiar with our focus peaking. We were one of the first to market with focus peaking. And this is using our second generation focus peaking system called the Knight's Gambit algorithm. And it can tell the difference between digital noise and detail. So this is going to allow you to have extraordinary focus control. And if you're a subscriber, you can even go into the advanced settings and define just how sensitive you want that to be. The same thing goes with our zebra stripes as well. Those things are user definable, and it's on our second generation. There are a variety of other technologies as well, and I don't want to bore you by going into all of them. Suffice it to say that everything about Firstlight is about not taking away advanced features and complexity, but obfuscating them in a way that actually makes them more available to the user by way of simplicity.
Simplifying might be the word that I'd use if I were drawing up the marketing materials. But one of the beautiful things about it is a tactile cross-swipe mechanism, which basically lets you engage the screen once and change your focus and exposure as much as you want. And we actually think, as much as we are fans of Apple and the native camera, that it's an even better system than theirs is when it comes to letting you make incremental adjustment on the fly. So just to it, if I'm using the native camera app, I tap it, I suddenly sample for focus and exposure, and then the common adjustment after that is to do a pull down gesture to change exposure. But now if I want to go adjust my focus again, I tap and it's going to sample both. So even if I have my exposure customized, personalized to exactly what I want, and I change my focus point, now I have to go back and change the exposure again. Here, beautifully, you can, on the XY axis, control both at any time and from a single touch. So I can dial in the exposure vertically and then change my focus horizontally instantaneously. So I can take the same shot but with a different focal point of interest and the same exposure value all at the same time. And whichever primary control I want to adjust, it's right there, all in one simple gesture. And the response from the initial week and a half that the app has been in the market has actually exceeded our expectations. And people love like that feature alone as a reason to make Firstlight their default app. So obviously we all know that photography apps is a very crowded marketplace with a ton of great apps out there. We're fans of a lot of the best apps out there. And so to be thought of within our first week or two as a peer of some of those top shelf products has been hugely gratifying. And for us, one other important thing to establish at the outset, like this is past R&D notwithstanding, our initial foray into photography, which we basically plan to be here for the next 10 or 20 years or so. So if people download Firstlight now, they're at the beginning of a long and we hope deeply rewarding journey, and we're very excited about the additional functionality that we're going to be bringing to this product over the next year and then subsequent many years thereafter.
I'm pleased to welcome Lightstream as the newest sponsor of MacVoices, and it couldn't come at a better time. You know what feels great? Paying off high-interest credit cards, getting a lower rate, and saving money. And that's where Lightstream comes in. With a credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream, you can get a 5.95% APR with AutoPay that will save you boatloads of money off the average credit card interest rate of over 20%. Even better, there are none of those annoying fees or penalties that others try to apply. Just a quick and easy online application, and you can get your loan as soon as the day you apply. Credit cards are like any other tool, useful if they're used correctly, but if you aren't paying attention, they can cost you more than you expected. That's why consolidating your outstanding card balances with a low interest rate from Lightstream can help you save money. Lightstream believes that when you have good credit, you deserve a low interest rate and great service, and that's exactly what they deliver. Just for MacVoices listeners and viewers. Apply now to get an additional interest rate discount. The only way to get this discount is to go to lightstream.com/MacVoices. That's lightstream.com/MacVoices for an additional discount. lightstream.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Lightstream for becoming the newest sponsor of MacVoices. Subject to credit approval, rate includes 0.0 autopay discount, terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/MacVoices for more information. So you guys answered several of the questions I would have had. My first one would have been, what were you thinking about trying to get into a photography app, because there's so many out there? But you explained that that it's a passion project, and also talked about some of the things you bring to it that are unique and are going to want those photographers out there, whether they're somebody like me who aspires to be more sophisticated than I am, or the ones that really know what they're doing. You know, you have some unique things to offer. And I really like that. I have so much respect for FiLMiC Pro and what you've done with that. And I have not had a chance to play with this new app, but I'm looking forward to it. Just based on what you said, that it doesn't sound like it's going to require me to dig down deep unless I really want to.
Yeah, the initial learning curve is close to non-existent. If you breeze through a couple of onboarding screens, you will know how to get a deeply rewarding user experience out of the app. Some of the things that the app brings to the market that we haven't touched on yet that we're thrilled about we have a whole range of film simulations and an organic grain structure that we've created so that no two shots will ultimately look the same. In a second, I'll pass it over to Chris, and he can talk about how we do that grain structure in and of itself. But we view Firstlight as a R&D lab for things that we ultimately might bring to FiLMiC Pro in the future. So some of the film simulations that we have harken back to great old black and white film stocks of the 1940s and film noir films that we're all fans of. Others embellish the color tonal range, much as familiar film stocks from Kodak would do. And so this basically imaging as a whole is something that we're incredibly passionate about, and we didn't want to confine ourselves solely to video. And now we have an incredible test vehicle for image manipulation that is under a lot less stress than the demands of high bit rate mobile video would be. So some of the stuff that people are getting exposed to in Firstlight right now, they can ultimately expect to filter out into other FiLMiC products in the future. And then there are certain things like one of our favorite aspects of Firstlight is a film simulation that we call Red Scale, which is inspired by aerochrome, which ultimately does a color replacement of something that's in the green range and makes it a vivid red. And so it basically turns an ordinary scene into a fantastical one. And we haven't seen anything like it in any of the other photo apps out there. So we find that a unique value proposition. And the other thing that Firstlight does, almost to the exclusion, I can think of one or two other apps that do it, but it encourages users to basically pre-visualize the look that they want. As you become familiar with these film simulations, you'll know contextually, based on the scene or the subject that you're shooting, the film simulation that is going to get you the finished product that you want. So by being able to pre-visualize and conceptualize your finished product and then dial it in within app, there's no more need to take the photo and then 6 to 8 hours later open it up in Darkroom or Snapseed or one of the innumerable great post-edit apps, and then try to get it shared socially long after the moment has passed. Here, it's one and done. This is my subject. Here's how I want to realize it. I configure it within Firstlight, hit the shutter, and presto, I'm done. It's a beautifully realized finished product in the same moment that you take it. And then you go to Instagram, Twitter, wherever you want to share your photograph with, and you don't miss the moment. And I would challenge your listeners, how many great photos are sitting somewhere in their camera roll that they intended to share months ago and never did because they didn't get the time to go back and edit their photos later. So we think that will mean a better ending user experience for everyone. So we're intensely proud of that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the grain?
Sure, absolutely.
Chris, if you don't mind, before you do, please do not let me question or challenge the way you've approached this. Is this Firstlight's answer to filters, or is this something a bit more subtle?
I'd like to speak to that. Yeah, so these are not filters. A filter would be like a core image kernel or something like that. These are far more complex. We're using a computational pipeline that we developed internally. It's in production for FiLMiC Pro. And it's actually used in FiLMiC Pro to do gamma spline remapping and histogram equalization over there. We took that computational pipeline and we employed it in Firstlight. And it's a hybridization of volumetric lookups, shader networks, and composite pipeline. All of these things are far more sophisticated than a simple filter, like you would generate off of Photoshop. So we feel like we have a lot to offer there. And we call them film simulations, not filters specifically, because that's what they are. They're not only scene adaptive in the sense that we do like recalibrate black points and white points, but they're device adaptive as well. Every single one is procedurally generated for each individual device. So when you first start up Firstlight, it's not going to load filters in. It's actually going to generate these cubiforms that are calibrated for that specific device. And I just encourage you to, or your listeners, to just try it. There's a sampler pack available at the free level of Firstlight, and I think they'll knock your socks off. Aerochrome, for instance, is surveillance film that Kodak really refined in the 60s. And we brought it to life in Firstlight. That film stock has been extinct for years, but you can shoot with it today because we brought it back. And really, like Neill intimated, we developed this out of frustration, right? Digital photography today is really about acquire, edit, and deploy, right? But back in the film days, you could just take a photo and then print it and share it with your friends. We want that experience, that simple experience, that ability to trust the film, or the film simulation in this case, to produce a pleasing result with no edits.
Yeah, sorry, Chuck, just to add one more thing to that. Sometimes in a creative space, whether it's photography, filmmaking, creative writing, I'm sure it extends to just about all the arts, but some sort of parameters actually expands the area of creativity. So if your plan is to basically start with acquiring a no-filter image and then go to Snapseed later, there are 300,000, probably many more than that, configurations and areas you could possibly go in generating your final image. But in a previous era, when you went out to take photographs for the day, if you committed to a black and white film, then you were shooting black and white film for the day. And it would inform what your subjects ended up being, or even where you went for a particular setting. Or depending on what the event was, then maybe black and white would be a non-starter, and you'd choose Ektachrome. So we kind of want to recreate that same sort of experience where, I'm going to go out for the day, I want to shoot some stuff, and what do I want to do? And we think that the film simulations will help you open up avenues of creativity, and it ultimately ends up being an incredibly satisfying user experience. It's hard to really describe, and it actually even takes a couple of days of using the app to become familiar with the film simulations and what they do. And we've certainly tried to include some granular details of the differences between the various film simulations to get users pointed in the right direction. But the beautiful moment is that there is an aha moment that happens somewhere in the first week or two of using the apps and the film simulations, where everything snaps into mental focus, and suddenly depending on the scene in front of you, exactly which film simulation is going to render out the best photograph for that particular time and place. And once that happens, then you become captivated by the whole experience, because when you hit the shutter button, you're actually done. That complete creative process is complete, instead of the beginning of a journey that, as we alluded to earlier, you may or may not ever complete.
I think it's really intriguing, Chris, what you were saying about the way it used to be, the way you used to handle photos, and trying to marry that simplicity, if you will, with the intricacies and the granular controls that you're trying to implement here as well. So I guess it's a different way of looking at it, and especially pre-selecting the look or the film grain or whatever, if you will, as opposed to what we're all have gotten used to at this point, and that's, Neill, as you said, post-processing. It sounds like it has the potential to be a lot more immediate, and for a lot of point and shoot folks, that's going to be great, because now they can make some of those creative decisions without having to go through the back end process.
Right, and ultimately they end up with something that looks like a film print. Like, the grain structure itself is beautiful, and we offer ultimately 4 settings of it, from fine, medium, and coarse, but also ISO adaptive. And the beauty of ISO adaptive is it's going to read the scene and the light and account for the potential for digital noise. And if you're in a high ISO environment and there's a good chance for noise, then it's going to adapt to a coarser grain setting. So the grain's going to override the noise, and you're left with an incredibly pleasing image. Similarly, if you're out in bright daylight and it's shooting at an incredibly low ISO, it's going to know that you don't need a coarse grain structure for that scene. So it would default to fine. So it's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you and is ultimately comforting and reassuring in that respect. But ultimately, all you have to do is read the scene, compose your shot, hit the shutter button, and have what we feel like is a print that was made in the lab.
The film grain itself was a long journey. It took us something like 3 months to dial that in. We went through a few different iterations of that. As he said, I'm a film shooter. I can't stand digital grain. It looks like somebody threw sand on an image. It looks terrible. There's a difference between like a texture being on top of the image and grain being a structural part of the image. Because film grain is a structural component of film. It's not a texture that's on top of the image. It is the image. Film is composed of silver halide crystals of varying sizes and densities. And not only that, but it's not a uniform texture. Depending on the density of the film, of the celluloid, or how much part of the film was exposed and how underexposed another part of the film was, the grain density changes. So it's not about just generating a random noise map and mashing it into the buffer with a multiply method. It's much more than that. And we feel like our grain simulation is an absolute industry leader. And ISO Adaptive really takes the guesswork out of it. It just perfectly adapts to every single scene.
So I want to make, there's one other question I want to make sure I get to, but I have to ask this. So Neill, close your ears. I want to ask Chris this. Chris, now, now that you've shipped this, and you say the other digital photography looks like somebody's thrown sand on it, are you satisfied with this as a bit of a film shooting enthusiast?
Yeah. So anybody on the FiLMiC team knows that I absolutely despise digital photography of all kinds. I am a film purist. I'm out there with my Leica or my Mamiya, and I'm shooting film. But I built Firstlight out of a place of disliking the digital experience. And that's how I architected it. And really, for me, Firstlight on a personal level has absolved many of those sins, right? The image, the rendering is beautiful. The grain structure is organic. The decisions are made for you. You don't focus on an interface, you focus on your subject. And for me as a photographer, that's really important. I don't want the interface or the user experience of an app to be the thing. The thing is my composition. It's the moment that I'm trying to capture. And for me, Firstlight has personally rekindled my love of mobile and digital photography.
And I obviously didn't want Neill to hear that because I was afraid the answer might go the other way. So that's good. That's good. We've all heard so much about sorry, Neill, sorry, Chris, but we've all heard so much about how the iPhone camera has improved, and especially now the iPhone 11 camera, that seems to be the best iteration yet. Are you all building on any particular part of the new technologies here, or is this going to be something that's applicable to an iPhone 5, 6, 7?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are using our own computational pipeline. And not only will it work on older devices, obviously it will scale its capabilities to older devices, but it will work on other platforms as well. We have an Android product that's in development currently. I know that's outside the scope of this particular talk. But we try to develop our technologies to be platform independent. And the reason that we do, even if a product never goes multi-platform, is it puts us in the correct mindset to develop solutions that we can control the evolution and development. So for the moment, we are using our own computational pipeline. Now that said, we do use some of the indigenous frameworks to enhance the image when available. HDR is a great example. Image fusion is another. But most of the heavy lifting is handled by our own computational pipeline.
Great. You both have made reference to, I think, something that sounds like subscription or maybe in-app purchases or whatever. Can you profile or outline what some of those are, if I'm reading that right?
Yeah, sure. I'll wade into this one. So FiLMiC Pro has had close to a 10-year life cycle where we have iterated, developed, innovated on that platform multiple times a year, every year, and plan to do so for the foreseeable future, multiple decades or more. And we are basically approaching Firstlight the same way. We're coming into photography to be a part of the mobile photography industry for a multi-decade experience as well. So initially we have crafted two pricing models, if you can call it that. Basically a great free user experience for anybody who wants to get familiar with the FiLMiC brand, the FiLMiC technology, our user experience. I would say roughly 60% of the app is unlocked and available for anyone to use free of charge. Then we are, I guess, testing out what we consider a modest subscription model, which would basically be like 99 cents a month or discounted by 33% if you buy it for the year. So $7.99 for a 12-month commitment. I would say that subscriptions as a whole is a polarizing topic for app consumers. And as a developer, I think it's a challenging position because we are caught between the consumer resistance to subscriptions, which, hey, we all get 200%. The idea of having more subscriptions than you can keep a handle on, I think, is a concern for anyone. And we've probably all had an experience of, I'm still paying for that, looking at a bank statement for something we haven't used in a while. So we completely get that. Yet at the same time, the App Store and Google Play are heavily incentivizing developers to move to subscriptions by letting them keep twice as much of, or I guess that would be a slightly inelegant way to phrase it, by reducing their commission by 50%. If you move to a subscription model and retain a user for over a year. So that's like real significant money savings for a developer. The other reason that Google and Apple have moved in this direction is that they understand the value of the implicit contract between a consumer and a developer that a subscription allows. And that is, we give you enough value for your money or you leave, plain and simple. And so it benefits the developer in the long run. So if 8 years from now, we're creating even more film simulations than we have over the preceding 7 years, then we're getting monetized for all of that development instead of just charging somebody $3 in 2019 and continuing to work for them in 2027. Yet at the same time, if we don't follow through on that, then nobody has to continue paying. So we think that there's a beauty in that dynamic, but still recognize that there are obvious shortcomings in just the movement from free paid apps to subscriptions, in that nobody wants to have 27 different subscriptions going at the same time. And my personal hope, and one that I have certainly voiced to any company that has any interest in listening, is that the real critical mass tipping point, I think, would have to happen when either Google Play or the App Store would offer bundled subscriptions from different developers. So just since we're riffing on photography, one example would be that I could pay for a, $5 a month photography subscription pack, and that would give me 5, 7 10 apps and I pick which ones I want out of the 10 or 20,000 photo apps that are on the market. That would be a real win for the consumer because they would have one subscription for a whole range of products that would ultimately suit their workflow. Obviously, there are some easy shortcomings of that. You know, if halide's one price, darkroom's another price, Mextures is another price, Firstlight's another price, and then they all go on a subscription plan, who gets what? Is it all the same price or is it prorated? But Apple has certainly, and Google too, creatively thought their way out of many potential tricky situations and are certainly moving more towards a service-based economy anyway. I think Apple Arcade and Apple TV would be two examples of that. So I think they're already, and actually Apple Music would be another. So they are proving that the model can work and that they can work with the creatives to somehow leverage the varying price points into one uniform price for the consumer. If they did that for the app-based economy, I think you would see consumers embrace it wholeheartedly. Last thing before I will shut up on this topic, you know, people who are resistant to subscriptions probably have dozens of photo apps that they paid $2 for that the developer hasn't updated in years because there's no economic incentive for them to do that anymore. And we think that that is certainly an even more imperfect solution than transitioning to subscriptions. With that said, how much trouble I get myself if I say some forward-leaning stuff. Let's just say that we're sympathetic to the concerns of the marketplace and maybe taking some steps to address that in an upcoming update.
You probably do get yourself in trouble because I get myself in trouble whenever we bring up subscriptions. And I think that subscriptions are a very proper way to go. It puts pressure on the developer. I mean, I guess that's the good news and the bad news. It puts pressure on the developer to keep earning that subscription, to keep delivering additional value as opposed to just buying the app once and there it sits and that's it until the next update or until a new iteration comes out that you have to buy again.
Right. Well, no one likes that model either. I mean, a handful of apps have tried that. I'm going to guess Pro Camera for a while, Pro Camera 6, Pro Camera 7. And that's an equally frustrating experience, though in some ways, actually, I think it's better than just buying the app once and thinking that the developer is going to continue to work on it 8 years from now without getting compensated. But certainly that didn't meet with universal approval, and most developers have actually backed away from that model and are potentially moving towards subscriptions. I don't know.
We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. If you look at FiLMiC Pro's update history, we've been rapidly updating it for almost a decade. For no other reason than we're just obsessed. And the truth is we do need to keep them. There needs to be an economic incentive to maintain this software. Not everyone's going to have this singular focus. And honestly, I'm not even sure how we made it this far with just a single purchase. But things do need to change, and they are changing. But that said, as Neill intimated, we are sensitive to different kinds of consumers, the different kinds of ways people want to pay. We're still in the exploration stage here. So,
I applaud the exploration because I want to see you continue to do things like what you've done with FiLMiC. I want to see it get better. I mean, it's already amazing, but I know that you guys have plans to try to make it better. And the same thing here with Firstlight. This is, a new app, and I'm sure there are things you want to do with it. So, and just don't get discouraged. I mean, as I said, I get mail every time we bring up subscriptions here, and some of it is hate mail for subscriptions, and some of it, I'm slowly seeing those. Some people say, hey, I think I'm finally getting it, or I think I understand, and that's encouraging to me, because developers have to be compensated to continue to develop, or to even just to keep the app running as Apple upgrades the system.
Right.
It doesn't seem like that hard a thing to understand, but the old model, still holds a lot of weight for a lot of people, unfortunately.
You can't leave a binary on the App Store forever. It will become unstable over time, just as the operating systems iterate. That's
Right.
absolutely true.
Yeah, and Apple, I don't know as well about Google, but certainly Apple has figured out some ways to basically do clean sweeps and get rid of a lot of deprecated apps.
Neill, speaking of Google, is Firstlight available only for iOS, or is it available for Android as well?
Currently, it's only available on iOS, but it's in late stage beta on Android. So there are actually plenty of talented photographers. If you hunt around on Twitter or Instagram, you'll see some of our Android beta people sharing their experiences out in the wild, and it looks amazing. So we're certainly exceedingly excited about bringing Firstlight to the Android marketplace, because it's a much less crowded photography app space over on Google Play than it is on the App Store. I think all of the old, what's my favorite expression, the App Store may be 15% of the users, but it's 85% of the revenue. That still holds true, and that's why most developers go to the App Store first.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by ATTO Technology, the power behind the storage. For more than 30 years, ATTO Technology has been providing network and storage connectivity for Mac users. They offer the most connectivity choices for Mac OS, with a wide range of Thunderbolt and host bus adapters for high performance and low latency networked storage connectivity. No matter which Mac you use, ATTO can be trusted to provide the latest drivers and tools to meet your needs. They work with partners to deliver end-to-end solutions to better store, manage, and deliver your data. Network adapters, storage controllers, and more for connectivity that include Fibre Channel, SAS, SATA, iSCSI, Ethernet, and yes, Thunderbolt, are all part of what ATTO brings to the table. I've had several fans of MacVoices write me to tell me that they are using and are very, very happy with ATTO products, and they're glad to see ATTO sponsoring MacVoices. And I am too. Are you one of them? Let me know. And if you're not yet, then visit atto.com and see what they can do for you. ATTO, the power behind the storage, at atto.com. That's ATTO.com. Thanks to ATTO for their support of MacVoices. So we've kind of danced around this all this time. How much is Firstlight?
I'm actually thrilled that you brought that up, because we think it's decidedly affordable when it comes to subscription. So there are a lot of creative apps that are charging $5 a month. We're charging 99 cents a month, and we're discounting it by 33% if you buy for the year. So it would be $8 for the year. We plan to offer significant updates every 6 to 8 weeks in the app, if not even sooner than that. And so we think that that's the implicit contract between us and the consumer. So we would encourage people to try whichever subscription model fits their needs best, and then watch the updates and the new features that we roll out over the next handful of months, and see if we continue to deliver value to the app in the way that we intend to do. And hopefully, and maybe we misjudged the market here a little bit, but we are hoping that our track record for FiLMiC Pro innovation and development over the course of essentially a decade would instill enough confidence to have people jump onto one of these modestly priced subscription tiers and experience it on the photography side. And I would say it's Still to be determined, but the people who have issues with subscriptions have certainly made themselves known.
I don't want to take us off topic here, but I think I will, because this is something that bugs me a little bit. I don't know about you, but I fire up my phone in the morning and, okay, I've got 21 app updates. So I don't have time to read every single app update, to find out what's new. So I hit update and go on with my day. Are you developing any way other than just, and I realize it would have to be something external, so you'd have to be asking for customers' information. But is there any way for a user to keep up with what those changes are and have that information delivered to them, or should they be visiting your website or blog? Because again, realistically, I know I don't have time to read all those app updates, especially when probably 70% of them are bug fixes or just little tweaks that I never even notice.
Yeah, many of the changes that are made aren't really worthy of bringing to the user's attention. A series of stability patches, the user doesn't really need to read that. They can if they want to, and I encourage them to, surely. But the features that we introduce in Firstlight will be very much transparent to the user. If you take a look at the resting interface, it really is an exercise in restraint and minimalism. And as you see things come online, it will be very easy to draw attention to them in the UI. And we want to keep that ethos going on. As the app evolves, it draws attention to itself, and it basically onboards the user through the course of its evolution.
Yeah, and Chuck, I would also like to add to that we've learned a bit from the FiLMiC Pro experience. And we also have a saying where we basically we try not to do anything to consumers that we ourselves hate. And so one of those is when you take a perfectly great app, completely reinvent the user interface, and somebody auto updates it, opens the app, and it looks like a completely unfamiliar product from what they were using just 2 days ago. And especially when it comes to FiLMiC Pro, where people are using it for creative projects that last either days, weeks, and sometimes even months, it can be mission critical that they're able to stay on a build or a user experience that they've been working for the first 50% of their product. So if they're going to be dramatic changes in the user experience, we signal those on social media well in advance. So by the time that FiLMiC Pro version 7 is getting ready to come to the marketplace, we're going to be signaling to our users when that's going to happen. And if they're in the midst of a creative project and need X, Y, or Z features, supposing something's going to be deprecated, they will be notified about that ahead of time. And so they can turn off auto updates and use the pre-existing version until they complete their project. I would think that philosophically we're going to adopt the same thing with Firstlight. For now, most of the major functionality updates are going to be around additional film simulations. And so that will not mess with the basic user experience, though there are some major things that basically, I guess, the native app experience offers, like the portrait mode depth controls that will be coming to Firstlight soon. And yeah, I guess actually we haven't thought 100% how to convey that to the user prior to an update. So I think that you've actually brought up a great point, and one that we're going to try to put our heads together and see how we can handle in the most considerate way possible. So thank you for that.
Oh, I was specifically thinking about that based on our conversation about value and the subscription model and all. And it's a touchy thing because you don't want your announcements to turn into spam for anyone. But for someone that is going to be the customer for an app like this, that it's not it has the potential to become something that people live in a lot more than just the odd app that they pop up, to play with for a few hours or a few minutes or whatever. So I think that, that I would want to know, what you're doing with it, just like I enjoy that with FiLMiC, seeing what is coming next and then finding it there. And it's like, oh boy, now I have a new toy to play with. So
Right.
I'm looking forward to checking this out myself. It sounds like something that I'm sure that I won't be able to take anywhere near advantage of it the way Chris does, but maybe I can get a little bit into his wheelhouse and have some fun with it.
You're going to surprise yourself, and a lot of it is ultimately what your personal aesthetic is. So there are a fair number of film simulations, and there'll be more coming every month or two. And ultimately, some are going to speak to you on a personal level that might be different than what my aesthetic is or Chris's is. So ultimately, you're going to be able to create a personal shooting experience that respects or reflects how you see the world. And I think that's beautiful. And then something very compelling to share with other people. One other point I wanted to make on the subject of subscriptions, just because they're so polarizing, but if you take our discounted yearly subscription of $7.99, multiply it by a decade, you're talking a shade under $80. Historically, the cheapest and junkiest zoom lenses that do nothing but actually degrade your shot are, $100 and $120. And if you're talking about any smartphone lens from a fisheye to super wide or a tele, they average around $120. We think that the functionality that we're going to bring to the mobile shooting experience over the next decade is going to enrich people's creative experience. I guess I'll go out on a limb and say exponentially more than any single one lens would do to anybody's creative toolkit. So we would certainly like people to give us a chance, sign up for a subscription, and then challenge us to continue bringing value, because that's exactly what we intend to do.
I think that's a great perspective. We all waste too much money on hardware. We're all looking for that magic bullet that says this will make me look 10 years younger and 20 pounds lighter and all that. And just learning to use your gear and having the gear there, in this case, the app that is able to perform, you just need how to use it to its best advantage. Yeah. Great point. Great point. So obviously this is in the App Store now, and the website where folks can go to learn all about it would be?
Yeah, it's filmicpro.com, and you'll find the Firstlight page underneath our products, and then you can go there and learn all about it.
Terrific. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the time and for all the work and the obvious passion that goes into this. I'm really looking forward to playing with it.
Thank you, Chuck. It's always a pleasure, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Okay. Chris, I hope you get a good night's sleep in that tie.
I will.
Take care. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Just based on FiLMic's reputation alone, you should go and try Firstlight. And if that doesn't do it, then everything that we've said here today should encourage you to go and check it out. And if you do get it and like it, share some of your photos with me. I'd love to see them. Chuck@MacVoices.com or Chuck Joyner on Twitter. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.